The metal was cold against my skin. So cold it burned. I could feel it, the circular impression of the gun barrel pressed into my temple, hard enough to leave a mark I would never get to see. The Revolutionary Guard's breath was hot on my face, smelling of cigarettes and chai. His finger rested on the trigger. Not squeezing yet. Just resting. Waiting. My hands were zip-tied behind my back. The plastic cut into my wrists. I could feel my pulse there, racing, betraying the calm I was trying desperately to maintain on my face. The concrete floor beneath my knees was wet. I didn't know if it was water or blood. I didn't want to know. Last chance, he said in Farsi. His voice was almost bored. This was just another day for him. Another apostate. Another file to close. Deny the Nazarene. Say the Shahida. Go home to your family. I opened my mouth. My throat was so dry the words almost wouldn't come. But when they did, they weren't the words he wanted to hear. Jesus is Lord. I heard the click. The hammer pulled back. This was it. This was the moment. 32 years of life, and it was ending in a basement in Tehran that smelled of mold and fear. My mother would never know what happened to me. My sister would spend years wondering. The church, those precious few who had become my real family, would hear whispers, rumors, another one disappeared. The pressure increased against my temple. My eyes were closed, but I could see light behind my lids. Bright light. Was it starting already? Was this what they talked about, the tunnel, the peace? And then nothing. The shot never came. My name is David. Not the name I was born with, but the name I chose when I chose Christ. Today, I'm sitting in a cafe in a country I never imagined I'd see. I'm drinking coffee that costs more than my family makes in a week. I'm free. I'm alive. And I'm serving Jesus Christ, the one they told me to deny, the one I couldn't deny even with a gun to my head. But to understand how I ended up on my knees in that basement, to understand how God reached down and pulled me out of the jaws of death itself, I need to take you back. Back to where it all began. Back to a boy who didn't even know he needed saving. This is my story. Every word of it is true. And if you stay with me, you'll see that God doesn't just save us from something. He saves us for something. Even when the cost is everything. I was born in 1985 in Tehran, 3 years after the revolution that changed everything in Iran. My parents never knew the Shah's Iran, Iran before the mullahs, before the morality police, before women had to cover every strand of hair or face consequences. For them, this was just normal. This was Iran. My father worked for the Ministry of Education. A government job. Stable. Respectable. It meant we had enough, not much, but enough. My mother stayed home with me and my younger sister, Maryam. We lived in a modest apartment in the Shariki Garb district, 3 rooms for 4 people, the walls so thin I could hear our neighbor's television through the plaster. We were Muslim in the way most people were Muslim. We fasted during Ramadan, mostly. We prayed sometimes. My father would take me to the mosque on Fridays when he remembered, when work didn't consume him. I learned the prayers phonetically, Arabic syllables I repeated without understanding. I knew I was supposed to feel something when I pressed my forehead to the prayer mat, but I never did. It was just words. Just a ritual. Just what you did to avoid questions. At school, they taught us that America was the great Satan. That Israel was a cancer. That the revolution had saved us from corruption and Western poison. I believed it because everyone around me believed it, or at least acted like they did. You learned early in Iran, there are things you say out loud, and things you only think. The gap between the two is where you survive. I was a good student. Mathematics came easily to me. Numbers made sense in a way that religion never did. They followed rules that were consistent, predictable. 2 plus 2 was always 4, whether you were rich or poor, whether the morality police approved or not. My teachers said I could study engineering at university, maybe even at Sharif University of Technology, the best in Iran. My father's eyes would light up when he talked about it. His son, an engineer. Respect. Security. A good future. But there was this feeling I couldn't shake. It started when I was about 14, 15. This sense that something was wrong, that I was missing something fundamental. Everyone around me seemed to know what they were supposed to do, who they were supposed to be. They moved through life with certainty, or at least the appearance of it. But I felt like I was acting in a play where everyone else had read the script except me. The prayers felt hollow. The mosque felt empty. When the imam spoke about paradise and hellfire, about submission and judgment, I felt nothing. Or worse than nothing. I felt a kind of dread, a sense that if this was all there was, if this was the meaning of existence, then what was the point? I couldn't talk about it. Not to my father, who would have been horrified. Not to my friends, who would have looked at me like I was crazy or dangerous or both. These weren't the kind of questions you asked in Iran. These weren't the kind of doubts you voiced. So I pushed them down. I focused on my studies. I told myself that when I got to university, when I started my career, when I got married and had a family of my own, this emptiness would fill itself. I was 17 when I took the Conquer, the National University Entrance Exam. I scored high enough for Sharif, for computer engineering. My father threw a small celebration, inviting relatives I barely knew to congratulate me. I smiled. I accepted their praise. And inside, I felt that same hollowness, that same question. Is this all there is? University was different. Tehran was different when you were a university student. There was more freedom, or at least the illusion of it. We could debate philosophy in hushed conversations in the back of tea houses. We could question things, carefully, always looking over our shoulders. The internet was censored, but we learned how to use VPNs, how to access the world beyond Iran's digital walls. That's when I started reading. Everything I could get my hands on. Western philosophy. Eastern mysticism. I read about Buddhism, about Hinduism, about atheism and existentialism. I was searching for something, though I couldn't have told you what. An answer to a question I didn't know how to ask. My friends noticed. David's become a philosopher, they'd joke, using my Farsi name, Davud. They didn't mean it as a compliment. Philosophy was dangerous. Philosophy led to questions that could get you in trouble. But I couldn't stop. Because the emptiness was growing. I had everything I was supposed to want, a place at a prestigious university, a future career, a family that loved me. But at night, lying in my bed in the dormitory, I would stare at the ceiling and feel like I was drowning in that emptiness. Like I was screaming underwater where no one could hear me. I was 19 years old. I had my whole life ahead of me. And I was terrified that this hollow, meaningless existence, was all there would ever be. I didn't know it then, but God was about to answer the question I didn't know I was asking. And the answer would cost me everything. It started with a satellite dish. In Iran, satellite dishes were illegal. But everyone had them. They'd hide them on rooftops, disguise them as water tanks, risk fines and confiscation because people needed a window to the world outside. My roommate Ali had somehow gotten his hands on one. We'd wait until after midnight, when the dormitory was quiet, and we'd flip through channels. Turkish soap operas, BBC Persian, music videos that would get you arrested if the morality police caught you watching. One night, Ali was channel surfing while I was supposed to be studying for an exam. The images flickered past news, sports, and some Korean drama. Then he stopped. On the screen was a man speaking Farsi, but something about him was different. He was talking about love. Not romantic love, not the transactional love I'd always known, but something else. Something that sounded almost impossible. Change it, I said. I knew what this was. Christian programming. We'd been warned about it. Missionaries trying to corrupt Muslim youth with their false religion. But Ali didn't change it. Just listen for a minute, he said. The man on the screen was talking about a God who loved us not because of what we did, but simply because we existed. Who loved us while we were still sinners, still broken, still lost. Who sent his Son not to condemn but to save. I felt something stir in my chest. Something I hadn't felt in years. Interest. Maybe even hope. This is dangerous, I told Ollie. But I didn't leave the room. We watched for maybe 10 minutes before Ollie got nervous and changed the channel. But those 10 minutes stayed with me. That night, lying in bed, I kept thinking about what the man had said. About grace. About a love that didn't have to be earned. Everything I'd ever known about religion was about earning. Praying 5 times a day, earning. Fasting, earning. Following the rules, earning. The harder you worked, the more you submitted, maybe you'd be found worthy. But even then, no guarantee. Allah was merciful, they said, but also just. And justice meant you got what you deserved. What if there was something different? What if there was a love that came first, before the earning, before the effort? I tried to forget about it. I had exams. I had a future to build. I didn't need this complication. But I couldn't forget. A week later, I found myself searching the internet late at night. The VPN slowed everything down, but eventually I found what I was looking for. Christian websites in Farsi. Forums where Iranians discussed faith. Stories of Muslims who'd become Christians, who they called MBBs, Muslim background believers. I read their testimonies. Stories of dreams and visions. Of Jesus appearing to people in the night. Of Muslims reading the gospel and feeling their hearts change. Part of me thought it was all propaganda. Psychological manipulation. But another part of me, the part that had been drowning in emptiness for so long, wondered. What if it's true? I started reading the Bible online. Just to understand, I told myself. Just to see what they believed. I started with Matthew, because that's where someone in a forum said to start. And from the first chapter, I was confused. All these names, these genealogies. This didn't feel like the Quran, which I'd grown up memorizing without understanding. This felt like history. Like something that actually happened. Then I got to chapter 5. The Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. I read it 3 times. This was backwards. This was the opposite of everything I'd been taught. The strong inherited the earth. The powerful. The righteous, meaning those who followed the rules perfectly. But Jesus was saying the broken, the mourning, the meek, they were blessed? I kept reading. You have heard that it was said eye for eye, and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to the other cheek also. This was radical. This was dangerous. This would get you killed. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. I closed my laptop. My hands were shaking. This wasn't just different from Islam. This was different from everything. From every survival instinct I'd developed living in Iran. You didn't love your enemies. You avoided them. You outmaneuvered them. You survived. But what if you didn't just survive? What if you lived? The question haunted me. For weeks, I went through my classes like a ghost. I'd sit in lectures about algorithms and data structures, but my mind was somewhere else. At night I'd read more. I read the whole Gospel of Matthew. Then Mark. Then John. John was different. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Jesus wasn't just a prophet. That's what Muslims believed, that Jesus was a prophet, nothing more. But John was claiming something else entirely. That Jesus was God. That God became flesh and lived among us. It was blasphemy. It had to be. This was shirk, the unforgivable sin in Islam, associating partners with Allah. If I even entertained this idea, I was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. But what if it was true? I started having dreams. Not the dramatic visions some people described, but unsettling dreams. In one, I was drowning, sinking in dark water, and a hand reached down. I grabbed it, and when I looked up, there was light. So much light I couldn't see the face of whoever was pulling me up. But I felt safe. For the first time in years, I felt safe. I woke up with tears on my face. This was getting dangerous. I knew it. Every website I visited, even with a VPN, was a risk. The government monitored everything. People disappeared for less. But I couldn't stop. It was like I'd been hungry my whole life, and someone had finally shown me food. Real food. Not the scraps I'd been surviving on. I found an online forum where Iranian Christians talked. I created an anonymous account. I just lurked at first, reading their conversations. They talked about house churches, secret meetings. They talked about baptisms in bathtubs and swimming pools. They talked about family members who disowned them, about losing jobs, about the fear of arrest. But they also talked about joy, about peace, about purpose. One night, I worked up the courage to post. Just a question. How do you know it's real? How do you know you're not just believing because you want to believe? The responses came quickly. Some quoted scripture. Some shared their stories. But one response stopped me cold. A woman who called herself Sarah, obviously not her real name, wrote this. I knew it was real when I was willing to die for it. When they arrested me and I had the choice to deny Jesus and go free, or confess him and face prison, I found out what I really believed. You don't know what you believe until it costs you everything. I stared at that message for a long time. Was I willing to die for this? I wasn't even sure I believed it yet. I was just searching. Questioning. That wasn't the same as believing, was it? But the emptiness that had consumed me for years was gone. Or at least, it was filled with something. With questions, yes, but also with hope. With the possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was meaning to this existence. Maybe it wasn't an accident. Maybe I was loved by a God who knew my name. I was 20 years old. I was studying computer engineering at one of the best universities in Iran. I had a future. I had a family. I had everything to lose. And I was about to lose it all. The message came through the forum. A private message from someone called Peter. Just 2 lines. You're in Tehran? There are others. If you want to meet, I can arrange it. I stared at my laptop screen for 10 minutes, my cursor hovering over the delete button. This could be a trap. The government was known for this, creating fake accounts, luring curious Muslims into meetings, then arresting everyone. I'd heard stories. A student from another university had disappeared after attending what he thought was a study group. His family didn't hear from him for 6 months. But something in me couldn't delete the message. I typed back. How do I know you're real? The response came an hour later. You don't. But neither do I. That's faith, brother. At some point you have to step out of the boat. I had to look up the reference. Peter walking on water. Stepping out of the boat onto the waves because Jesus called him. And then starting to sink when fear overtook faith. 3 days later, I was on a bus heading to an address in South Tehran. Peter had given me instructions. Come alone. Tell no one. Take 3 different buses to make sure you're not followed. Get off 2 stops early and walk the rest. If you see anything suspicious, keep walking and don't look back. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the other passengers could hear it. Every person who looked at me felt like a plainclothes agent. Every camera on every corner felt like it was tracking my movements. I'd left my phone in my dorm room like Peter instructed. They could track phones. I felt naked without it, disconnected, vulnerable. The neighborhood was poor. Narrow streets, crumbling buildings, laundry hanging between balconies. Children playing football in an alley scattered as I walked past. An old woman sweeping her doorstep glanced at me with suspicion. I didn't belong here. It was obvious. The address was a 3rd-floor apartment in a building that looked like it should have been condemned. The elevator didn't work. I climbed the stairs, each step feeling like it might be my last as a free man. What was I doing? This was insane. I should turn around. I should run. I knocked on the door. 3 quick knocks, then a pause, then 2 more. The signal Peter had given me. The door opened a crack, and I peered through the gap. Then the door opened wider, and a man about my age, maybe a few years older, gestured me inside quickly, looking past me down the hallway before closing and locking the door behind me. "David?" he whispered. I nodded, unable to speak. "I'm Peter." "Well, not really. But that's what we call each other. Come in. The others are already here." I followed him into a small living room. There were maybe 8 people there, sitting on the floor, on cushions, on a worn couch. Men and women. Young and old. They all looked up as I entered, and I saw my own fear reflected in their faces. But also something else. Something like joy. "Everyone, this is David. He's new." A woman in her 30s stood and embraced me like I was family. "Welcome, brother. You're safe here." I almost laughed. Safe? In an illegal gathering that could get us all arrested? But as I looked around the room, I understood what she meant. There was safety here that had nothing to do with the police or the government. It was the safety of being seen. Of being known. Of not having to pretend. They started singing. Quietly, carefully, keeping their voices low so the neighbors wouldn't hear. Christian songs in Farsi. I didn't know the words, but I tried to follow along. The melodies were simple, repetitive. The words were about Jesus, about his love, about being found. Then an older man, maybe 50, opened a book. A Bible. An actual physical Bible, which I'd never seen before in Iran. He read from the Gospel of John. Chapter 3. "For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish but have eternal life." He looked up from the page, directly at me. "That word whoever, do you know what it means? It means anyone. It means everyone. It means the Ayatollahs and the street sweepers. It means the morality police and the prostitutes. It means the righteous and the wretched. It means you. Me. God loved me. Not God might love me if I performed the right rituals, if I prayed enough, if I fasted enough, if I submitted enough. God loved me. Present tense. Already. Now. I felt something break inside my chest. Like a dam cracking. I didn't even realize I was crying until the woman who'd hugged me earlier handed me a tissue. They took turns sharing their stories. How they'd come to faith. A young woman who'd had a dream of Jesus 3 nights in a row. A middle-aged man who'd watched his son die of cancer and found Christian neighbors who prayed with him and showed him a hope beyond death. A university professor who'd secretly studied comparative religion and found something in the Gospels he couldn't explain away. Each story was different. But they all had the same thread. Something was missing, and then it wasn't. Someone was lost, and then they were found. When it came to my turn, I didn't know what to say. "I'm not sure I believe yet," I admitted. "I'm still trying to figure it out." The older man with the Bible smiled. "Doubt is not the opposite of faith. Fear is. You're here. That took courage. That took faith, even if you don't realize it yet." We talked for hours. They answered my questions. Why did Jesus have to die? Why couldn't God just forgive without the cross? How could one man's death pay for everyone's sins? How could God be 3 in 1 at the same time? They didn't have perfect answers, but they had honest ones. They shared their own struggles, their own doubts, their own questions. As the night wore on, I realized something. This was what I'd been looking for. Not just answers. Community. People who knew the risk of what they were doing and did it anyway. People who'd counted the cost and decided Jesus was worth it. Before I left, the older man pulled me aside. "David, I need to be honest with you. If you continue on this path, if you choose to follow Jesus, your life will never be the same. Not just because of what you believe, but because of what it will cost you. Your family may reject you. Your friends will abandon you. You could lose your education, your career, your freedom. You could lose your life. I'm not trying to scare you away. I'm trying to prepare you. Because Jesus doesn't promise us safety. He promises us Himself. And we have to decide if that's enough. I took 3 different buses home that night, just like I'd been instructed. But I barely noticed the route. My mind was spinning. My heart was full of something I couldn't name. It wasn't peace, exactly. It was more like direction. Like I'd been wandering in the dark and someone had finally handed me a compass. Back in my dorm room, Ollie was asleep. I sat on my bed in the darkness and opened my laptop. I found the Gospel of John again. Chapter 10. I am the Good Shepherd. The Good Shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. A shepherd who dies for the sheep. Not a shepherd who sends the sheep to die for him. A God who sacrifices himself. It was backward. It was impossible. It was everything I'd been searching for without knowing it. I knelt beside my bed. I didn't know how to pray. Not really. Not to this Jesus. But I tried. I don't know if you're real, I whispered into the darkness. But if you are, I want to know you. I'm tired of being empty. I'm tired of pretending. If this is true, if you really died for me, if you really love me, then I'm yours. Whatever that means. Whatever it costs. Nothing happened. No voice from heaven. No vision. No dramatic moment of transformation. But something did change. I can't explain it. The emptiness I'd carried for so long, it didn't disappear entirely, but it shifted. Like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room and let in fresh air. I could breathe. I climbed into bed. And for the first time in years, I slept without dread. I didn't know it then, but that prayer, that simple, desperate prayer in a dorm room in Tehran, had just changed the trajectory of my entire life. The government didn't know about it yet. My family didn't know. I didn't fully understand what I'd done. But heaven knew. And hell knew. And the battle for my soul had just become visible. The next few months were the strangest of my life. On the surface, everything looked the same. I went to classes. I took exams. I ate lunch with Ollie and our other friends in the university cafeteria. I called my mother every week and assured her I was eating well and studying hard. I was still devout, the engineering student with a bright future. But underneath, everything had changed. I started attending the house church regularly. Every Friday night, I'd take my 3 buses, walk the extra blocks, knock the special knock. The group became my family in a way my actual family had never been. We prayed together. We studied the Bible together. We shared our fears and our hopes. For the first time in my life, I wasn't alone. Peter, whose real name I never learned, became like an older brother to me. He'd been a Christian for 5 years, which in Iran made him practically a veteran. He taught me how to be careful. How to clear my browser history properly. How to spot a tale. How to memorize scripture instead of keeping a physical Bible. How to pray with your eyes open so it didn't look like you were praying. You have to think like a spy, he told me once. Because that's what we are. Undercover agents for the kingdom of God. He said it with a smile, but we both knew it wasn't really a joke. I was baptized in March, 3 months after that first house church meeting. We did it in the bathroom of an apartment owned by an older Christian couple. The bathtub was barely big enough for me to crouch in. Peter baptized me while the others sang quietly in the next room. I remember going under the water and thinking, this is it. The old David is drowning. And when I came up, gasping, water streaming down my face, I felt newborn. The old man who'd first read me John 3 verse 16 embraced me, soaking wet as I was. Welcome to the family, brother. Welcome to the family of those who will not bow. I should have been afraid. The statistics were clear. Christians in Iran faced harassment, imprisonment, even execution. Converting from Islam was considered apostasy, punishable by death. The regime was cracking down harder than ever on house churches. Every week, it seemed, we heard stories of raids, arrests, churches shutting down. But I wasn't afraid. Not yet. I was too full of joy. Too full of this strange, reckless love for Jesus. I wanted to tell everyone. I wanted to shout it from the rooftops. I wanted my father to understand, my mother to see, and my sister to know the truth I'd found. Peter saw it in me. He pulled me aside after a meeting. David, I know what you're feeling. I felt it too when I first believed. But you have to be smart. You can't tell your family. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It won't go the way you think it will. But they love me, I said. They'll want to understand. He looked at me with such sadness. They love the version of you they think they know. When you tell them you've become a Christian, you're telling them that person doesn't exist anymore. You're telling them their son is dead. And most parents, they can't accept that. They'd rather turn you in than lose you to Jesus. I didn't believe him. I couldn't believe him. My family wasn't like that. We weren't that kind of Muslim. We were modern, educated, reasonable. I was so naive. It happened during Nowruz, the Persian New Year, when I went home to visit my family. It was late March, and Tehran was beautiful, the trees just starting to bloom. My mother had prepared all my favorite foods. My father asked about my classes. Miriam, who was 16 now, told me about a boy at school who liked her but whom she thought was annoying. It was so normal. So warm. So much like the home I'd always known. And I ruined it. We were sitting around the sofa, the traditional spread laid out on the floor, finishing our meal. My father was in a good mood, telling a story about a colleague at the ministry. My mother was laughing. It felt like the perfect moment. The safe moment. Baba, I said. Maman? There's something I need to tell you. The laughter stopped. My father looked at me. What is it? I've been doing a lot of thinking. A lot of searching. And I've found something. I've found faith. Real faith. My mother smiled, relieved. That's wonderful, David. Your father and I have been worried you were drifting. We're so glad you're returning to Islam. No, I said. Not Islam. I've become a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the clock ticking in the next room. My father's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Confusion. Disbelief. Then anger. An anger I'd never seen before. What did you say? I've accepted Jesus as my Savior. I've been baptized. I'm a Christian now. He stood up so fast he knocked over his tea. The glass shattered on the floor. No. No, you haven't. This is some kind of joke. Some kind of phase. It's not a joke, Baba. It's the truth. It's what I believe. My mother started crying. What have we done wrong? Where did we fail you? You didn't fail me. You gave me everything. But I was empty inside. And Jesus filled that emptiness. I wanted you to know. I wanted to share this with you. My father was shaking. Do you understand what you're saying? Do you understand what this means? You've committed apostasy. You've betrayed your family, your country, your people. I've found the truth. He slapped me. Hard. Across the face. I'd never been hit by my father before. Not once in my entire life. My mother screamed. Miriam started crying. Get out, my father said. His voice was cold now. Controlled. Get out of my house. You are not my son. I have no son. Baba, please. Get out. He was shouting now. Get out before I call the authorities myself. You think I won't? You think I'll protect a blasphemer? An apostate? Get out. My mother was sobbing. Miriam was huddled in the corner, terrified. I left. I grabbed my bag and I left. I walked out of the apartment where I'd grown up, where I'd taken my first steps, where I'd celebrated every birthday and every Nowruz of my life. I walked out and I didn't look back because if I looked back I would have fallen apart right there in the hallway. I made it to the street before the tears came. Great, gasping sobs that I couldn't control. I ducked into an alley and collapsed against a wall, crying like I hadn't cried since I was a child. I'd lost them. In one conversation, in 5 minutes, I'd lost my entire family. Peter had tried to warn me. The others at the house church had tried to warn me. But I hadn't listened. I'd thought love would be enough. I thought truth would win. I was learning that in Iran, truth could cost you everything. I went back to my dorm that night. Ali took one look at my face and knew something terrible had happened. I couldn't tell him the truth. So I lied. I said my father and I had fought about my grades, about my future. Ali believed me. Why wouldn't he? We'd been friends for 2 years. Friends didn't lie to each other about the things that mattered. But I was lying. About everything. About who I was. About what I believed. About where I went every Friday night. The weight of the secret was crushing. At the next house church meeting, I told them what had happened. They gathered around me. They prayed for me. They cried with me. The woman who'd first hugged me that very first night, Sister Hannah we called her, held me like a mother while I broke down again. This is the cost, she said gently. This is what Jesus meant when he said we'd have to lose our lives to find them. But you're not alone. You have us now. We're your family. And they were. They really were. But late at night, lying in my bed in the dorm, I'd think about my mother's tears. My father's rage. Miriam's terrified face. And I'd wonder if I'd made a terrible mistake. Then I'd remember the emptiness. The years of feeling nothing, being nothing, searching for something I couldn't name. And I'd remember the first time I read about Jesus. The first time I understood that God loved me not because of what I did but because of who He was. The first time I felt that void start to fill. No. I hadn't made a mistake. I'd made the only choice I could make. The choice to be honest. To be real. To follow the truth wherever it led. Even if it led to suffering. The next few months were hard. I threw myself into my studies, trying to distract myself from the pain of losing my family. I didn't hear from them. Not a word. It was like I'd died. Like I'd never existed. But the house church sustained me. We met every week, sometimes more often. We studied the Bible together. We prayed for each other. We encouraged each other. When one of us was struggling, the others would rally around them. When someone lost their job because their faith was discovered, we'd pool our resources to help them. We were learning what it meant to be the body of Christ in a place where being the body of Christ could get you killed. And we were growing. New people kept finding us. Seekers like I'd been. Muslims who were disillusioned. Muslims who'd had dreams. Muslims who'd secretly read the Bible and found something they couldn't deny. Each new person was a risk. We didn't know who we could trust. The government had infiltrated churches before. One informant could bring down the whole network. But we couldn't turn people away. How could we? We'd all been seekers once. We'd all needed someone to take a risk on us. So we prayed. We discerned. We trusted God to protect us. And for a while, He did. I was in my final year of university when things started to go wrong. It started small. A member of our church, a young woman named Nasreen, stopped showing up to meetings. We tried to contact her, but her phone was disconnected. When Peter went to her apartment, the neighbors said she'd moved away suddenly. No explanation. No goodbye. We assumed she'd gotten scared. I decided it was too risky. It happens sometimes. People would taste freedom, and then realize the price and back away. But then it happened again. Another member disappeared. Then another. We started to realize. Someone was watching us. Someone knew about us. Peter called an emergency meeting. Only the core group. 6 of us gathered in a different location, a basement apartment in a part of Tehran none of us knew well. We have to assume we're compromised, Peter said. Someone has informed us. The question is who and how much do they know? We sat in that cramped basement, looking at each other with suspicion we'd never felt before. Was it Hassan, the quiet university professor? Was it Layla, who'd only been coming for 2 months? Was it one of us sitting in this very room? The paranoia was suffocating. We have to split up, Sister Hannah said. Go underground. Stop meeting as a large group. Maybe small groups of 2s and 3s, different locations, different times. But if we scatter, we lose each other, someone protested. We lose the community that keeps us strong. If we don't scatter, we all get arrested, Peter said quietly. And then there's no community at all. Just empty prison cells. We prayed together that night. We held hands in a circle in that basement, and we prayed for protection, for wisdom, for courage. We prayed for our brothers and sisters who'd disappeared. We prayed for whoever had betrayed us, that God would change their heart. Then we said goodbye, not knowing if we'd see each other again. I went back to my dorm feeling more alone than I'd felt since before I found Christ. Ollie was out somewhere. I sat on my bed in the darkness and I opened my laptop. I needed to hear from God. I needed something to hold on to. I opened the book of Acts. Chapter 5. The apostles had been arrested for preaching about Jesus. They were brought before the Sanhedrin, the religious authorities who wanted them dead. And Peter, the same Peter who denied Jesus 3 times, stood up and said this: "We must obey God rather than human beings." They were flogged for it. Beaten within an inch of their lives. The passage said they left the Sanhedrin rejoicing because they'd been counted worthy of suffering disgrace for the name. Rejoicing. After being beaten. After being threatened with death. They rejoiced. I closed my laptop. I knelt beside my bed. And I prayed a prayer I never thought I'd pray. God, if suffering is coming, give me the grace to rejoice in it. Give me the strength to be faithful. Don't let me deny you. No matter what they do to me, don't let me deny you. I meant it. Every word. But I had no idea what I was asking for. 2 weeks later, I was walking back to my dorm after a late night at the library. It was past midnight. The streets were mostly empty. I was tired, thinking about an assignment due the next day, not paying attention. The van pulled up beside me so fast I didn't have time to react. The door slid open. Hands grabbed me. I tried to scream, but something covered my mouth. I tried to fight, but there were too many of them. They pulled me into the van. The door slammed shut. And we were moving. A bag went over my head. My hands were zip-tied behind my back. I couldn't see. I could barely breathe through the fabric. Someone was shouting questions at me in Farsi, but the words weren't making sense. My mind was racing, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. This was it. This was what we'd all been afraid of. I'd been arrested. The van drove for what felt like hours but was probably only 20 minutes. When it finally stopped, they dragged me out. I stumbled, couldn't see where I was going, my feet catching on steps as they hauled me up and inside a building. Down a hallway. Downstairs. The air got colder, damper. We were going underground. They threw me into a room. I hit the ground hard, my shoulder taking the impact. The zip ties cut deeper into my wrists. The bag was still over my head. Then I heard the door slam. Lock. And silence. I lay there on the cold floor, breathing hard through the fabric, trying not to panic. I was alone. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was going to happen. All I knew was that I was in the custody of people who believed I deserved to die for my faith. Time became meaningless. I don't know how long I lay there. Hours, maybe. Long enough for my shoulders to start screaming from the position of my arms behind my back. Long enough for thirst to become painful. Long enough to pray every prayer I could remember, and then pray them again. Eventually, the door opened. Someone yanked the bag off my head. The light was blinding even though it was just a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. I squinted, trying to see, 3 men. Revolutionary Guards. I could tell from their uniforms. One of them grabbed my hair and pulled my head back, forcing me to look at him. David Ahmadi, he said. I am a student at Sharif University. Age 22. From a good Muslim family. And a traitor to Islam. I'm not a traitor, I managed to say. My voice came out hoarse, weak. He hit me. Hard. Across the face. My head snapped to the side. I tasted blood. You converted to Christianity. You attended illegal church meetings. You possess illegal religious materials. These are crimes against the Islamic Republic. These are crimes against God Himself. How did they know? How much did they know? Had they been watching me for weeks? Months? Has someone in the house church been informed after all? I want the names, he said. Everyone in your church. Where you met? Who led the meetings? Give me the names and this will be easier for you. I don't know what you're talking about. He hit me again. Then again. Then he nodded to one of the other guards, who kicked me in the ribs. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. I couldn't breathe. I curled up on the floor, trying to protect myself, but they just kept kicking. Eventually they stopped. The leader crouched down next to me. This is just the beginning, he said. We have days. Weeks. Months if we need them. We will break you. Everyone breaks eventually. The only question is how much you suffer first. They left me there. Bleeding. Gasping for air. Every breath sent fire through my ribs. But I hadn't given them the names. I hadn't betrayed my brothers and sisters. Not yet. The interrogations followed a pattern. They'd leave me alone for hours, sometimes days. No food. Little water. Just enough to keep me alive. The isolation was its own form of torture. I'd lose track of time. I'd start to hallucinate. I'd hear voices that weren't there. Then they'd come get me. Drag me to an interrogation room. Ask the same questions. The names. The locations. The leaders. And when I refused to answer, they'd hurt me. Sometimes with fists. Sometimes with batons. Sometimes with methods I don't want to describe. They were professionals. They knew how to cause maximum pain without killing. They knew where to hit so the bruises wouldn't show if they needed to present me to a judge. They knew how to break people. But something strange was happening. With each interrogation, instead of getting weaker, I felt stronger. Not physically, my body was failing. But spiritually, something was happening that I couldn't explain. I'd remember scripture. Verses I'd memorized with the house church. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. I'd remember the apostles rejoicing after being flogged. I'd remember Stephen being stoned and praying for his killers. I'd remember Jesus on the cross saying, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. And I'd feel this presence. This peace that made no sense. I was in pain. I was afraid. But underneath it all was this unshakable certainty that I wasn't alone. That Jesus was there with me in that cell. That he understood. That he'd been tortured too. That he'd been betrayed too. That he knew exactly what this felt like. During one interrogation, after they'd beaten me particularly badly, the lead interrogator got in my face. Why? He shouted. Why are you protecting these people? They're nothing to you. Just give us the names and go home. Go back to your life. Your family will take you back if you renounce this nonsense. You're young. You have your whole future ahead of you. Why are you throwing it away for a dead Jew who claimed to be God? And I heard myself saying something I didn't plan to say. Because he's not dead. He rose. And he's alive. And he's right here with me right now. And you can beat me, you can kill me, but you can't take that away from me. The interrogator stared at me like I was insane. Maybe I was. Maybe that's what faith looks like when it's tested. Maybe it looks like insanity to people who've never experienced it. He left me alone after that. For 3 days, no one came. No food. No water. Just me and the darkness and the pain. I thought I was going to die. I thought this was it. They'd decided I was worthless, that I'd never talk, so they were just going to let me die of thirst in this cell. I prayed. God, if this is it, I'm ready. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for these last 3 years of knowing you. I don't regret it. I don't regret any of it. Into your hands I commit my spirit. I meant it. I was ready. But God wasn't done with me yet. On the 4th day, the door opened. A guard I'd never seen before came in with water and bread. He set it down in front of me without a word and left. I drank the water so fast I almost choked. I ate the bread like a starving animal. And I wondered what had changed. Why had they decided to keep me alive? I found out 2 days later. They dragged me to an interrogation room, but this time it was different. There was a video camera set up. Lights. A script on the table in front of an empty chair. The lead interrogator was there, but he was different too. Almost friendly. David, he said. Using my Christian name for the first time. David, we're going to make this very simple. You're going to read this statement. You're going to confess your crimes. You're going to renounce Christianity and reaffirm your faith in Islam. We'll record it. We'll broadcast it. And then you can go home. I looked at the script. It was all there. Everything they wanted me to say. That I'd been deceived by Western missionaries. That Christianity was a lie. That Islam was the truth. That I denounced Jesus Christ and his false claims. All I had to do was read it. Just words. Just syllables. And I could go home. I could see my family again. I could finish my degree. I could have my life back. The interrogator saw me hesitating. He smiled. It's just words, David. Just say the words. It doesn't matter what you believe in your heart. God knows your heart, right? So just say the words and save yourself. I looked at the camera. I looked at the script. I looked at the interrogator's smiling face. And I thought about Peter denying Jesus 3 times. I thought about how it had destroyed him. How he'd wept bitterly. How he'd spent the rest of his life making up for that moment of weakness. I thought about my house church. About Peter and Sister Hannah and all the others who'd risked everything to show me Jesus. What would happen to them if I denounced everything on camera? Would it make them doubt? Would it make them afraid? I thought about Muslims all over Iran who were secretly curious about Jesus. Who were searching like I'd been searching. What would happen if they saw me, a convert, saying it was all a lie? Would they turn back? Would they miss their chance to know Christ because I was too weak to stand firm? And I thought about Jesus. Hanging on a cross. Able to call down legions of angels to save himself. Able to step down and walk away. But staying. Enduring. Faithful to the end. No, I said. The interrogator's smile vanished. What? I won't read it. I won't deny Jesus. You can kill me, but I won't deny him. His face went red. You stupid, stubborn fool. Do you think this is a game? Do you think we won't do it? We will execute you. We will put a bullet in your head and throw your body in an unmarked grave, and your family will never even know what happened to you. I know, I said. And my voice was steady. Calmer than it had any right to be. I know. But I can't deny him. I won't. He grabbed me by the throat. You will. We'll break you. Everyone breaks. Then break me. But I won't deny him. He threw me back into my cell. For the next week, they tried everything. They beat me worse than before. They kept me awake for days. They played mind games. They brought in a man who claimed to be a Christian pastor who'd renounced his faith. They showed me videos of other converts who'd recanted. They told me my family was suffering because of my stubbornness. But every time they asked me to deny Jesus, I refused. I don't know where the strength came from. It wasn't me. The old David, the David before Christ, would have broken immediately. Would have said whatever they wanted to hear. Would have done anything to make the pain stop. But something had changed in me. Christ had changed me. And he was holding me up even when I had nothing left. Then came the day I told you about at the beginning. The day they decided they were done with me. They dragged me to a different room. Concrete floor. Drain in the middle. Blood stains that had never quite washed away. I knew what this room was for. They forced me to my knees. Hands zip-tied behind my back. The lead interrogator stood in front of me with a pistol. Last chance, he said. Say the Shahida. Deny the Nazarene. Go home. And I said it. The words that sealed my fate. Jesus is Lord. He put the gun to my temple. The metal was so cold it burned. His finger rested on the trigger. This is it, I thought. This is how it ends. 22 years old, and I'm going to die in a basement in Tehran for believing in Jesus. But I wasn't afraid. I know that sounds impossible. But I wasn't. I felt at peace. Perfect peace. I could almost see Jesus standing there in that room with me. Not taking away the suffering, but standing in it with me. Saying, I know. I've been here. You're not alone. I closed my eyes. I prayed. Jesus, into your hands I commit my spirit. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for finding me. I'm ready. I'm coming home. The interrogator pulled back the hammer. I heard the click. And then I heard something else. A door slamming open. Voices shouting. Someone said stop. Stand down. Not this one. The pressure of the gun disappeared from my temple. I opened my eyes. There were new people in the room. Officers. Higher ranking from the look of their uniforms. And they were arguing with my interrogator. I couldn't make out all the words. Something about orders. Something about a mistake. Something about international attention. They pulled me to my feet. Dragged me out of that room. Down different corridors. Upstairs. And then outside. Outside. I hadn't seen daylight in weeks. It was so bright I couldn't see anything. Just white light. Like being born again. They threw me into a different vehicle. No bag over my head this time. I could see. Guards on either side of me, but different guards. Silent. Not hostile. Just watchful. We drove through Tehran. I watched the city pass by like I was seeing it for the first time. The traffic. The people. The ordinary life continued while I'd been underground being tortured. It all felt surreal. Like a dream. They took me to another building. Not a prison. Some kind of government office. They led me to a room where a man in a suit was waiting. Not a guard. A bureaucrat. Divud Ahmadi, he said, reading from a file. You've caused quite a problem. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what was happening. Was this another interrogation? Another technique to break me? There's been pressure, he continued. Your case came to the attention of certain human rights organizations. Questions were asked. Attention was drawn. Attention the Islamic Republic doesn't need right now. So we've made a decision. He slid papers across the desk. Deportation orders. You're being expelled from Iran. You have 24 hours to leave the country. You will never be permitted to return. If you attempt to return, you will be arrested and executed immediately. Do you understand? I stared at the papers. I couldn't process what he was saying. Deported? Free? After everything, they were letting me go. Your family has been notified, he said. They've disowned you officially. As far as the Islamic Republic is concerned, you no longer exist. You were never a citizen. You were never here. And you will never speak of what happened in detention. If you do, We have ways of reaching people even outside Iran. Do you understand? I nodded. I still couldn't speak. Sign here. I signed. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold the pen. 24 hours later, I was on a plane. I don't even remember the details. Someone from the church had somehow gotten word. They'd arranged everything. A ticket. A contact in Turkey. Money. A phone number to call when I landed. I sat in that airplane seat, my body broken, my ribs still aching with every breath, and I watched Iran disappear below me. The mountains. The desert. Everything I'd ever known. My family. My home. My past. All gone. And all I could think was, He saved me. God saved me. He reached down into that basement, into that moment when the gun was at my head, and He saved me. I landed in Istanbul. I called the number I'd been given. A Turkish Christian met me at the airport. He took me to a safe house where there were other Iranian refugees. Other believers who'd fled. They cared for me. Helped me heal. Helped me process the trauma. Helped me understand that I was safe now. That I was free. It took months. The nightmares were bad. I'd wake up screaming, thinking I was back in that cell. I couldn't be in small spaces. Couldn't handle anyone touching me unexpectedly. I had to relearn how to live without fear. But slowly, gradually, I healed. Not just physically. Spiritually. I started to understand what had happened. Why did God save me? What He'd saved me for. I started working with other Iranian refugees. Helping them navigate asylum processes. Telling them about Jesus. Discipling new believers. Using my story to encourage others who were afraid. And I realized something. God hadn't just saved me from that basement. He'd been saving me my whole life. Saving me from emptiness. Saving me from meaninglessness. Saving me from a life of pretending to be someone I wasn't. The gun didn't fire that day. But something in me did die. The old David. David who played it safe. David who cared more about comfort than truth. David died in that basement. And a new David was born. A David who'd been tested and found faithful. A David who knew, beyond any doubt, that Jesus is real. That Jesus is worth everything. That Jesus will never leave you or forsake you, even in the darkest basement, even with a gun to your head. It's been 5 years now since I left Iran. I live in a Western country that I never imagined I'd see. I have political asylum. I have safety. I have freedom. But part of my heart is still in Iran. With the underground church that's still meeting. Still risking everything. Still choosing Jesus over safety. I'm in contact with some of them. Peter is still there. Still leading. Sister Hannah is still there. Still loving new believers like she loved me. The church is growing. More and more Iranians are coming to Christ. The government can't stop it. They arrest people and the church multiplies. They execute believers and 10 more rise up. They tried to kill Jesus and He rose from the dead. They're trying to kill His church and it just keeps growing. That's what I do now. I tell my story. I train believers who want to go back to Iran as missionaries. I translate materials. I support the underground church. I pray. Every day, I pray for Iran. For my family who still doesn't speak to me. For the guards who tortured me. For the regime that tried to kill me. Because Jesus told us to love our enemies. To pray for those who persecute us. And I've learned that's not just a nice idea. It's a command. It's how we break the cycle of hatred. It's how we win. Some people ask me if I regret it. If I wish I'd never become a Christian. If I wish I'd just kept searching the internet quietly and never gone to that house church, never been baptized, never told my family. And I tell them the truth. I don't regret a single moment. Not the rejection. Not the arrest. Not the torture. Not even that moment with the gun pressed to my head. Because all of it, every bit of suffering, was worth it to know Jesus. To really know Him. Not just know about Him. To know Him. There's a verse in Philippians that I've come to love. Paul wrote it from prison. He said, I want to know Christ, yes, to know the power of His resurrection and participation in His sufferings, becoming like Him in His death. That used to sound crazy to me. Why would anyone want to participate in suffering? Why would anyone want to become like Jesus in His death? But now I understand. Because it's in the suffering that you find out if your faith is real. It's in the darkness that you discover Christ is light. It's in the valley of the shadow of death that you learn the shepherd is really with you. I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't go back and choose safety over truth. Because I've tasted something that most people never taste. I've experienced something that you can't experience without cost. I've experienced the faithfulness of God when everything else is stripped away. When your family is gone. When your country has rejected you. When you're alone in a cell waiting to die. And you discover that Jesus is enough. He really is enough. That's what I want you to understand. That's why I'm telling you this story. Not to make you feel sorry for me. Not to make myself look heroic. I'm not a hero. I'm just a guy who was drowning and got rescued. But I want you to know that Jesus is real. That He's worth everything. That if you're searching like I was searching, if you're empty like I was empty, if you're pretending like I was pretending, there's hope. There's truth. There's life. And yes, following Jesus might cost you. It cost me my family, my country, and my safety. It might cost you your reputation, your career, your comfort. It might cost you everything. But what you gain is infinitely more valuable than what you lose. You gain Christ. And Christ is enough. The gun didn't fire. God had other plans. He saved my life because He has work for me to do. Stories to tell. People to encourage. A testimony to share. And maybe He saved me so I could tell you. Yes, you. Whoever you are, wherever you are. Maybe you're in Iran right now, secretly watching this, wondering if Christianity is true. Maybe you're in a free country, but you're in your own kind of prison, your own kind of emptiness. I want you to know there's hope. There's a God who loves you. Who knows you. Who's calling you. And if you answer that call, your life will never be the same. It will be harder. But it will be real. It will be full. It will be worth living. Jesus said, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. That's what He gave me. Full life. Real life. Life that's worth dying for. That's my story. That's my testimony. And I'm standing here today, alive and free, because God is faithful. Because Jesus saves. Because the gospel is true. If this story has touched you, if it's made you think, if it's stirred something in your heart, don't ignore it. That's God calling you. That's the Holy Spirit drawing you. Respond. Search. Seek. Ask questions. Read the Bible. Find other believers. Take the risk. It might cost you everything. But you'll gain Christ. And Christ is worth everything. And if you're already a believer, if you already know Jesus, let this story remind you what you have. Don't take it for granted. Don't play it safe. Don't hide your faith. There are people dying for this gospel. There are people in prison right now for confessing Jesus. Don't waste your freedom. Use it. Share Jesus. Lie boldly. Count the cost and decide He's worth it. Because He is. He really is. Thank you for listening to my story. If it encouraged you, if it challenged you, if it helped you in any way, please subscribe to this channel. Like this video. Leave a comment and let me know how God spoke to you. And share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who's searching. Share it with someone who's suffering. Share it with someone who needs to know that Jesus is real and Jesus saves. God bless you. And may you have the courage to follow Christ no matter what it costs.